General Government Capital Outlay Subcommittee to order. If we could take roll, please. All right, a quorum is present. So we'll move to the first bill. I see Delegate Batten.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee. I believe there's a substitute before you.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Chairman, I'll move substitute.
All right, so the substitute is before us. If we all approve it, say aye.
Aye.
All right, now the substitute's properly before us. Go ahead, Delegate Batten.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This substitute is technical in nature, and it includes a reporting requirement. The underlying bill simply clarifies that Virginia's Tier 1 and Tier 2 universities require Treasury Board approval before entering into certain university-related foundation financing arrangements.
All right, thank you. Any questions for the patron?
Mr. Chairman, I move reporting with substitute.
Second.
All right, so the House Bill 1912 has been properly put before us. Go to the voting board, please. House Bill 1912 reports 7-0 with substitute. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee.
Our delegate result, House Bill 2192. No, yeah, we'll do since the delegate's here. We'll do a result.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. There is a
Mr. Chairman, I move the amendment.
Second.
All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
All right, all opposed? All right, the amendment is properly before us. Go ahead, delegate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Before you is a project we've been working on at Catawba Hospital, state-of-the-art project unlike anything else that we've seen across the country. As you know, we authorized a study to allow us to figure out how we can integrate residential treatment and some outpatient services and some other services here. And hopefully we can keep the conversation going. Happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right, any questions for the patron? Hearing none.
Mr. Chairman, I move reporting with amendments as amended.
Second.
All right, so House Bill 2192 is properly before us. If we could go to the voting board, please. All right, as amended, House Bill 2192 reports out 7-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Delegate Tran. House Bill 2207.
Yes, sir. House Bill 2207, I do have an amendment.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I move
It's a whole
substitute.
substitute? Thank you, a substitute.
Mr. Chairman, I move substitute.
Second.
All right. House Bill 2207 substitute is before us. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, all opposed? All right, the substitute is properly before us. Go ahead, Delegate.
Thank you. The substitute extends the delayed enactment until July 1, 2024. This bill amends a section of the code that was put in place in 1999 when I think personal computers were becoming ubiquitous in the office setting. And the section of the law, the Virginia Information Technology Access Act, requires technology that is being purchased to be visually accessible. We are expanding that to include other disabilities. We've seen in the last 23 years that there are other disabilities that are affected if you're unable to access these types of tools. And so there's a couple of things we keep in place with current law. For example, the 5% exemption, which is that if accessible technologies cost 5% more than inaccessible technology, you have an exemption from the law. We maintain that, so I hope that that helps make it a wash. We also exempt localities with populations of 50,000 people or less from certain requirements, knowing that they don't have necessarily the manpower or the expertise in this area. We eliminated a report, an annual report to the Secretary of Administration, and made some other changes that I think address many of the concerns that constituents had, stakeholders had brought.
All right, thank you, Delegate Tran. Any questions for the delegate? I think she called you and I old there somehow. Old? Yeah. Oh.
I would never dare. But I remember being in my my computer labs.
Your bill's very specific. I think it identifies the chairman and I as being old. So, Mr. Chairman, I move to report a bill as substitute.
Second.
All right, so the bill is properly before us. House Bill 22 as the substitute is before us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, the substitute passes 7-0.
Bye, thank you.
Just don't get giddy now.
Yeah.
That'll get an award.
I've never made anybody that happy, I don't believe.
That may get a sensitivity award.
All right, so the last bill before us is House Bill 1957, and there is a substitute. I think Chairman Knight has put some changes and his fingerprints on this to make it acceptable or more acceptable to us. If I could have someone move the substitute so we can
Chairman, I'll move
distribute.
substitute.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, so if staff could explain the difference. Hold on, Delegate Krizik, do you have a question now, or?
No, I'll wait till staff. Thank you, Mr.
Okay,
Chairman.
thank you. All right, Tony?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What the bill does, very simply, is it's still a procurement bill. It still creates a threshold for dealing with the where projects and what method of procurement would be used. First, what it does in the beginning, it does clarify that construction may be procured by either competitive sealed bid, or it could also be done through construction management or design build contracting, which is provided in a section of the code. It defines what a complex project would be, and it maintains the change that was in the original bill, which is that it would have to include 2 or more of the enumerated characteristics that were on that list. And here's where it starts to change it just a little bit. First, what the bill does is that it defines a state public body. It changes that definition, and it treats covered institutions. Covered institutions are the institutions that have level 3 authority. They are also covered the same as state public bodies, and they do adopt their own procedures, but those procedures must conform with the procedures that the Secretary of Administration has also put down. It requires that the public bodies, it sets a threshold first of $52 million. The original bill was $125 million. $52 million is the threshold. Below that threshold, basically what would happen is, just like it happens now, is that an institution can request to use an alternative method other than design, bid, build. But what changes here is it puts a little more teeth into general services, as opposed to general services evaluating that request and it being advisory, it's binding. So institutions cannot choose to say, thank you for the advice, we're going to choose a different method. Under 52. Over 52, DGS still does the evaluation, but the institution chooses the method that they see as best. Where the 52 came from, there was an original request of somewhere between 26 and 40. That was the baseline. That's several years old. That was inflated up using current inflation factors. The bill then also ties that as a starting point and builds into this that the threshold will be indexed based upon the public procurement pricing index going forward. So that's now going to be indexed going forward. There are some technical changes to the reporting requirements. It does require that the procurement work group meet and come back in November to report to the governor and to the money committee chairs on any requested changes that they might want to make after they've had some experience with this. And then lastly, it does for all the projects as of 1 January 23 that are already authorized for construction, those projects will proceed under the current guidelines. So it's prospective in that regard. Any project that you've already authorized, so all those pool projects that are already in the budget that were authorized for construction will proceed in the way that we currently are set up, but going forward, it would change. That's it in a nutshell, Mr.
All
Chairman.
right, thank you, Tony. Any questions for staff on this?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just a couple.
Yes, sir, Delegate Krizik.
So I think the chairman has made this bill a lot better. There's no doubt about it, and I appreciate that. I'm just a little bit concerned about, does DGS have the capacity to make this determination, whether it's design build or whatever, for every project that this new legislation would require? It seems like it could be something that the that they're not ready for?
They are currently doing that now.
Okay.
They currently review projects now. The only difference is going to be, so, example, project comes in right now, the threshold now was 26. Someone comes in under 26 and says, this is a complex project, I want to use design build. DGS, the Department of Engineering and Buildings, does review it. They might agree, or they might say, no, you should use, you have made the case, you should use design bid build. The institution then can choose to continue on the original path. The only difference now is when DGS makes that recommendation, that is the method that would have to be used. It puts a little more teeth into it.
Mr. Chairman, just one follow-up. So just to be clear, so this would not slow the process down by which public bodies can get their bids out?
That's correct. It shouldn't, it doesn't modify the current process that's currently in place, except that the threshold increases somewhat, and with that threshold is indexed, and the recommendations from general services below the threshold would be binding. Other than that, basically, it shouldn't change, really nothing changes that dramatically that would bog anything down.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm gonna throw up a red light as a cautionary thing, but not to do damage to the bill. Thank you.
All right, any other questions for staff? All right, anyone in the audience like to speak in favor of the legislation? Anyone in the audience would like to speak against the legislation?
Move to report. Second. That's substitute.
With the substitute, that's right.
We adopted this. All right, so we have a second on reporting the substitute on House Bill 1957. Please go to the voting board, please. The substitute for House Bill 1957 reports out 6-2. Thank you, and I think that completes our docket. Committee shall rise.